You're good, guy.
Well, welcome to Friday at 4, the weekly public affairs podcast for the Vermont Daily Chronicle. I'm your co-host, Guy Page. I'm here in the 802 Scoop studio on Main Street in Barrie. Thank you, Raylene Meunier. And here with our social media director, Paul Bean. Hi, Paul.
Hello, Guy.
Boy, it's great having you back.
I know, it's great to be back.
Yeah. Legislature starts next week. We're both going to be up there and working it hard. So, Paul, what?
Just quickly, before we get started, folks, any sound, image difficulties, anything you're seeing on your end, let us know. Don't be afraid to let us know. We really appreciate it whenever you do. And if you want to join in the conversation, you can comment below. If you're watching on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, X, wherever you're watching, please be sure to, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, and that's one of the most simple ways you can support us here at Vermont Daily Chronicle, so be sure to do so.
Crowdsourced troubleshooting here at Friday at 4. Yes, thank you, Paul, and thank you, folks. Let us know if you can't hear something. So today we've got 3 segments, and we're going to talk about a Vermonter's surprise Christmas visit to Mar-a-Lago, the home of President Donald Trump. And we've got pictures to prove it. We'll also update you on another much more distressing Vermont national connection, which is the Norwich grad who apparently was inside that Tesla truck when it blew up in front of the Trump building in Las Vegas. And also, we'll be talking, well, mostly Paul will be talking, I think, about the latest on the future of the clean heat standard. And when I say latest, I mean our conversations today with some of the key legislators. And clean heat standard, of course, is the legislature's latest carbon tax plan to take money from heating fuel users and give it to utilities and to the renewable power industry. But first, we'd like to introduce you to the sponsors who make this show possible. We welcome first-time sponsor One Day in July, the Burlington-based investment firm. One Day in July provides low-fee, diversified index investment management and fiduciary financial advice for individuals, families, and institutions. Go to www.onedayinjuly.com to learn how to reduce fees, improve performance, and avoid behavioral errors with their proprietary simulator tool and educational resources. Welcome back to Procter Gas, the family-based, the propane people, they're known as, owned and operated by our good friend and supporter, Judy Taranovich. The team at Procter Gas has more than 100 years of combined experience in the propane industry and is dedicated to bringing the best possible services, products, and customer care to residents throughout Vermont. And thank you also to our longest-running sponsor, Randmark Corporation and owner-operator Randy Rulo of Berlin. He has been serving central Vermont and surrounding areas with excavation, construction, and real estate services since 1979. They're a local, family-owned company committed to the values of Vermont. Their residential building division, Village Homes, specializes in affordable, energy-efficient, modular, and manufactured home projects. Their family team and skilled craftsmen have decades of experience to complete your project with ease, on time, and on budget. Thank you again. The show doesn't happen without these sponsors, and we're so grateful for all 3 of you. And I think I can safely say there will be more in the next few weeks. So
should we also add just one shout out to Raylene Meunier and the studio 802 Scoop. You might have mentioned it, but okay, that's definitely a big shout out.
And I'm glad you brought her up because she has a vision for this place, for this studio, where she and Michael Booten, new representative Michael Booten, and others are shooting regular podcasts, news shows. And she'd love to fill this place. She'd love to have 5 or 6 a day here. And she said it doesn't need to be news. It can be a book club if you want. But if you're sort of in the Barrie-ish area, or you're willing to travel a bit and you want to come in and do a podcast, it's not all that hard to do, is it, Paul?
It's not that hard, but it will take a little bit of understanding. I mean, if you have any bit of tech ability, you'll be able to figure it out pretty good.
And Raylene was very available to us to kind of walk us through a lot of that. So really, if you're thinking podcast and you've got a subject, it's funny, the newspaper industry and the traditional radio and broadcast industry are having a harder and harder time. But this online thing, this internet thing, is just exploding. And we're practically on the ground floor of really the latest media revolution. And here we are. And we're glad to be doing it. So our first story, the logger goes to Mar-a-Lago. Vermont Daily Chronicle readers know Mark Koester. He's a hardworking logger, jack of all trades from Windham County. As a candidate, he was a candidate for Congress. He was a no-nonsense guy, ran a spirited campaign against Becca Balint for the U.S. Congress seat. He also, Paul, you remember, he was responsible for bringing General Michael Flynn to Vermont.
Yes, he was.
And that all-day event that he had in Williston and in Morrisville, and still by far our most listened to podcast was our interview with him. So part of our mission here really is to bring Vermont to the nation, and to some degree bring the nation to Vermont. And this story is an example of that, which is, Mark, he had a really tough campaign, worked really hard, and he, of all people, as a dirt underneath his fingernails working guy, knows how hard it is to make a living in Vermont. But he was invited to this sumptuous, famous West Palm Beach home by General Flynn, who was hosting a fundraiser there for a nonprofit. President Trump attended, at least the pictures seem to indicate he was there, and also folks like Tucker Carlson, Kid Rock, journalist Lara Logan, and I don't know if you've shown the pictures there, Paul, of our guy, of Mark.
There's Mark there with Lara Logan.
Hobnobbing with Lara Logan. And there's pictures of him with other sort of like movie producers and other folks, kind of in I'm not sure if it was really sort of the new conservative journalism. I'm not sure if you'd really call it that, but hey, if Tucker was there and Lara Logan were there, certainly at least had that flavor.
Guy, I just pulled up here. I wanted to share everyone this. This is a real funny one, and I'm sure you know about this. This is the cartoon that was made by Tim Newcomb of Mark Koester and Becca Balint during the debate. I apologize, everybody. It's a little bit blurry. I pulled this from the web just now, but that's a cartoon that was made of Mark Koester. I think this must have been 7 days.
Yes.
Yeah.
7 days.
And I think they were kind of trying to make fun of
they
Mark.
Sure were.
But when you actually look into what he was talking about, I think he had reason to be saying the things he was saying. But of course, Representative Becca Balint just absolutely steaming during that debate. If you get a chance to go watch that one, and I think it was probably one of their first ones early in the general election season.
I think there weren't any more after that.
Yeah, because he was pretty colored.
Right.
I actually don't know if there was more or not, but he's quite a character, and to think that he was down there with those folks.
It's funny because Mark is boy, if there's ever a working class Vermonter kind of guy, very plain spoken, but boy, is he smart.
He is very smart.
And articulate, and not a lot of the comments were saying, boy, this guy sounds like a bozo, because he didn't, apparently didn't go to college or whatever and didn't talk like that, but what he was saying was pretty darn smart. And so interesting. So we're really glad that Mark got a chance to go there.
Yeah.
And he made this comment in his email. We had hoped to try to get him on, and maybe we will at some point. But he said, while the nation knows almost nothing of Vermont and looks very harshly upon us due to Bernie Sanders, so does Vermont know almost nothing about the nation and the world. As bad news travels far and fast, good news gets lost. The momentum towards the positive has affected every corner of America. Most folks are paying attention. More folks are paying attention than ever before. And he says, we're winning bigly, not just in Vermont, but across the nation and the globe. So that was a perspective of someone who was down with a bunch of movers and shakers who had kind of made a lot of this stuff happen. That happened. He helped make it happen in Vermont, and he was with a lot of people who made it happen nationally. So he had sort of a perspective down there that we don't see. Although, hey, whoa! Oh, that was so clever of me. I'll have to do that again. Shall I do that again, Paul, just to prove that I can?
Is everything okay over there, guy?
What a dope.
It's okay. It happens, guy. Don't worry.
Edit that out, Paul.
I'll
oh, wait, we can't
later.
edit things
it's
out,
live.
can we? Yeah, it's live. Oh, well.
You kind of scared me. Just making sure I'm awake over here, I guess.
I was just trying to get his attention, folks. Mm-hmm. Anyway, but Paul, you went down.
Yeah.
Tell me, obviously you didn't get the envelope. You didn't get the invite.
I wasn't invited, but I did go check it out. I drove by it twice down in West Palm Beach, and it's very strange, like you come out on this, there's a kind of a peninsula island, if you will, where the actual city, there's an inlet, and then there's, this island barrier, if you will, coming off the ocean. So you take a bridge to get out there, and it's a big drawbridge, and there's police everywhere, and as you get closer to Mar-a-Lago on that bridge, there's like these people with huge cameras with giant scopes so they can see as far in as possible.
Sure.
And you can't actually drive around Mar-a-Lago like you used to be directly through the island, but they got some pretty high security going on.
I imagine so.
It's no joke. It's quite the fortress on the ocean, if you will. It really is. It's pretty impressive.
Whoa.
I don't know if you know the history with the Mar-a-Lago, but I believe it was the Kellogg family who originally built it. The Kellogg family, the cereal brand or grain. I think they're more in the grain business than anything.
Right. Okay.
But they built it back in the late 50s, and then Trump bought it in the late 80s, and everybody thought he was crazy, and typical Trump story. You should look into it a little bit. But
and he turned it into something pretty gorgeous.
Probably the most sought after club membership in America right now. I mean, I don't know, maybe that's a little dramatic, but
I would imagine. Sure. So anyway, that was just a bit of, it's sort of cold and in some ways dark in Vermont in a lot of ways, but there are parts of the country where it's a lot warmer and brighter, and things just look a lot better. And so, kind of nice to hear that from Mark. So, our second segment, this one I found really distressing. We still don't really know much about it, but there is a Vermont connection to the exploding Tesla Cybertruck out in Las Vegas, outside Vermont's, outside of the Trump building in Las Vegas. And that is that the suspect in that received an online degree from Norwich University in Northfield, the nation's oldest military school, and your hometown, right?
Yeah,
Paul?
that's right.
Right, yeah.
It's very strange.
Right, you bet. The deceased suspect, Matthew Livelsberger, age 37, attended the school before becoming a Green Beret. He was in the 10th group, I understand, of the Green Beret. And the school with which the Chronicle publishes their stuff, and we have a rapport with their communications person, And they sent along this comment. They said, above all, our hearts go out to those impacted, wrote Mark Kolb, the Director of Campus and Athletic Communications, Marketing and Communications Office. He continued, we do not have the additional details about the incident at this time, and we have not been contacted by law enforcement. We can confirm that the person identified in media reports completed an online degree in 2019 in strategic studies and defense analysis. Now, if you go to the Chronicle today, you'll see a story by our reporter, Mike Belosky, where he goes into quite a bit more depth about Livelsberger's background. And he also mentions that the Associated Press reported on the Vermont connection as well. And I'd encourage you, if you want to know more, to go to www.vermontdailychronicle.com, check it out. And also, speaking of the Associated Press, AP has a long and storied history of having skilled professional reporters covering the Vermont State House, covering Vermont policy and life in general, and that's come to an end. The AP, they have no more reporter, no more Vermont reporter.
So wait a minute, Guy. Talk to me about that.
Sure.
Who was the reporter?
It was Lisa Rathke, was the last one. She was part-time. The State House institutions like Wilson Ring had been there for a long time. Dave Graham was an AP reporter. Ross, I'm sorry, I forgot his name now. But a number of very good, skilled reporters were covering the State House and were quite a presence up there. And like so much of the media, AP just sort of, in Vermont anyway, just sort of withered away. And what's left? Well, Paul, for the first time, Vermont Daily Chronicle will be having 3 reporters in the State House. Myself, which has been pretty much a constant. And Paul, you were in there last year. You're going to be in there a lot this year.
I'm going to love it.
Yeah.
It's going to be a blast.
What are you going to be covering?
I don't know. No, just kidding. I know. Energy, climate, environment, that kind of stuff.
Okay.
And you and I have talked a little bit about some other things, but we're not exactly sure yet, maybe.
Yeah.
But I think that's kind of going to be the main focus.
Energy, climate, environment, those all sort of go together?
I would say so.
Yeah.
I would say so.
Yeah.
Maybe some of the legislators would disagree, but I think most of them would agree.
Yeah.
But energy specifically, I'm really interested in because I think when you look at society and our culture here in Vermont as a whole, that's like one of the biggest conversations is how we're going to produce electricity. What are we going to drive? Are we going to drive electric powered vehicles or gas powered vehicles? And I'm curious to see, especially this coming session, what direction they are going to want to go with things. And I know we want to talk more about that.
Well,
are we ready to segue into that? Sure.
Let's do it.
Well, so for example, on the clean heat standard, which was the story that I actually covered today, which I can pull up here just so people can see it. Here we go. Just going to show you on the screen share. But it appears like the legislature is actually going to maybe take a step back on the clean heat standard. From my understanding, they're definitely going to come back with something that's similar, but it's not going to be the same as it was, at the very least. Today I spoke on the phone with Scott Beck, Senator Scott Beck, from newly elected. Well, he's senator-elect, I guess, technically. Yes. And he
What's
basically.
His position?
I'm sorry.
What's his position? Why does he?
Is he a chair? I'm sorry. Is he a chairman of?
Well, he's the GOP minority leader.
Oh, okay.
They haven't really picked the chairs yet.
Okay.
But
yeah,
he's really the head of the GOP in the rather large, now 13-member caucus, 13 or 30-member caucus in the Senate.
Okay. Well, point is, I spoke with him earlier today, and he told me that he seems to think that what they're going to come back with is maybe a bill that's going to incentivize the use of electric heat for just with the clean heat standard, electric heat, alternative energy for people to heat their homes, but it's going to be incentivized, not mandated / enforced, because his argument, and this is the same stance that the governor gave me as well, the press secretary, the governor gave me as well, is Vermonters seem to be okay with incentivizing certain programs, certain ideas, specifically electric heat, but they don't like the idea of telling people what they are and are not allowed to use and enforcing that by law, or a carbon tax, essentially. So that's what I'm seeing.
We don't have enough taxes here, Paul. We need more. We need some carbon taxes.
You really think so, Guy?
Do not quote me. At least if you do it in facetious context.
I think that's just it. It's like, and when I was talking with him earlier today, and I didn't include this part in the story, but he's saying, people are getting to the point in this state where they're making choices on things to make payments on that you can't really make choices on. And I get that. I think we're all feeling that to a certain degree. And I think that's the thing. Like, there's a level of government where you need certain services from your government. You need certain programs and goals and initiatives. Like, you want that, but if people aren't able to afford the basic necessities of life, and we're beating a dead horse a little bit. We've talked about this all this last campaign season and session. But if people can't afford their basic necessities, they will change how they vote. And we saw that in November. And something like 70% of Vermonters still heat their home with carbon fuel, carbon-based fuel, one way or another. So they're going to have to reapproach it. The problem that he also told me is some of these senators in their district, there's more of a positive attitude towards the clean heat standard. So for their constituents, they feel as representatives that they need to meet the demands of what their voters are asking for. But it's seeming now with 13 Republican senators, maybe throw a blue dog Democrat in there, that they don't exactly have the majority on this issue.
Right.
And they've had the majority on this issue for, at least it's in the legislature, for the past 4 years? I don't know, probably longer, right? They just haven't been able to get it past the governor's office.
Okay, let's say they get a 16-14 yes vote on whatever it is they want. So the Democratic majority says, we love the clean heat standard. We've got 16 votes. And they get it. It passes out of the Senate 16-14. And then it goes to the House. And let's say it clears the House. I'm not sure it will, but let's say it does. Then what happens to it?
If it clears the House?
Yeah.
Well, I think that's basically what Amanda Wheeler was alluding to, is like whatever they come up with and it goes through and then it goes through to the House, they're not going to give any stance on what they're going to do with it. They might support it, and if it's something they can work with and they think Vermonters can live with it too, then maybe they can finally put together something that the governor and the majority can agree upon for a version of the clean heat standard.
What's your take, Paul, on if the Democrats push through basically another version of this year's clean heat standard? They basically rubber stamp
the same thing.
Clean heat standard. Is the governor going to veto it or not?
I would say, yeah, definitely.
I would
say definitely. I don't think he's been very consistent over the past 4 years, especially. Yeah. Again, since 2020, I've seen him veto a version of the clean heat standard now every session. Okay. Am I incorrect on that?
Something like it.
It's something like that.
Yeah.
I don't think that he's going to budge on that stance. I think they feel pretty strongly that
and
this
is something. And what happens when he vetoes it? Can they override it?
I'm sorry? Oh, no, they can't override it anymore.
They can't?
They can't. They don't have the supermajority.
Right.
It's totally... So I think that the clean heat standard might be dead, Guy. And, just thinking back to election night, sitting in these same seats that we were, to be sitting across from you saying what I just said, feels like a victory for Vermonters. But I think the work has only just begun. And I'm not the only person that shares that sentiment. Rob Roper, who is a columnist, of course, with us. If you guys do not read Rob Roper and you read us, you should be reading him. Be sure to go subscribe to his work. He's behind the lines. Rob is the man.
Yeah.
But he kind of made clear today on X, work's not even close to done yet. We got to repeal the Global Warming Solutions Act, which is, for those that do not understand this, allow me to explain. The Global Warming Solutions Act was a law that was passed through the Paris Agreement in 2017, which Governor Scott agreed to be part of, as well as a few other states. Right? They signed on to this through the Global Warming Solutions Act, which basically mandated a set of carbon reduction goals by 2025, right?
Sounds right.
2030, and I think
2050.
2050,
yeah. So 3 stages.
So, and if we don't meet those goals by the Global Warming Solutions Act, there is a provision that allows any third party to sue the state of Vermont.
Right.
So, look, I mean, I'm not, we could talk all, well, this is already happening, right? We've already had, what was it, the Vermont, Conservation Law Foundation?
Yes, has already sued.
They've already sued.
Yeah.
And, I mean, there's so many connections that you could draw to these organizations and the renewable energy industry. And basically they're just like making sure, like, one way or another, everybody's going to get paid, whether it's going to be through legislation or you're going to get sued. And talk about job security, right? For these people that work for these groups. They've really figured out through litigious means to provide security in their industry. And I can't blame them.
What if they don't win the lawsuit?
It depends, guy. That's the next level, right? So, like, if they're suing the state, then is it Charity Clark who's defending the state of Vermont?
In theory.
So, I mean, do you think they're going to win the lawsuit?
Is she going to push really, really hard?
Yeah, that's kind of what I'm saying. I think this is
but
like,
that's only in Vermont. That's only in what, federal court in Vermont. Then it gets bumped up to an appeals court, and then it gets bumped up to very possibly the U.S. Supreme Court, which right now I'm thinking, a Supreme Court with perhaps another Trump nominee coming in the next 4 years. Kind of hard to imagine them just going gaga all over a lawsuit like that.
Well, I don't know. I'm definitely hopeful that the legislature can get serious about repealing the Global Warming Solutions Act. I think that there's a lot of Democrats that even I've spoken to that feel like this doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
You know, I'm somebody who can think, clearly about this. Like, we want to have opportunities for new energy, right? If we want to have, I think it's a good goal to be striving towards renewable energy, energy independence, these types of things. But we can't do it at the cost of Vermonters. I mean, if we're just suing the state, if we're just suing our own people to the taxpayers, essentially, well, then you're just taking money away from the potential to continue these programs. It just doesn't make any sense. It's by definition regressive, right? It's not a positive force. It's a fear this punishment, right? And fear of punishment can be a good motivator, but I'm not sure that in this situation we want that.
Right. I was encouraged by something I read, and I'm going to see if I can find it. I wrote a little, while you were working on your piece on the Clean Eaton Standard, I wrote a little thing. Special interests keep pushing the war on carbon, but Senate maybe have cold feet. That's in today's Chronicle. And I came across a quote by the Senate Majority Leader, Keisha Ram Hinsdale, that to me was one of these, finally, someone in charge in the Senate seems to get it. And we've been fighting for so long, this idea that Vermont must be first. Vermont must lead the way. We need to reduce our carbon emissions no matter what, because it's like a moral imperative or something like that. And it doesn't really matter. Maybe it sort of matters what happens to people's lives, but you got to keep your eye on the ball, hair on fire, climate change. But today, or a few days ago, quoted in VT Digger, Senate Majority Leader Keisha Ram Hinsdale said, quote, "I think voters asked us to focus on their well-being over the allure of being some kind of national leader in an abstract sense." She gets it.
Yeah.
That, I think a lot of Vermonters have just been waiting for that kind of environmental policy, which is clean air, sure. Reduce carbon, sure. Over our dead bodies, no.
Yeah.
So there's someone there who's, Senate Majority Leader is pretty influential, seems to get it.
Yeah, I think it's big that she understands it, and I don't think she's the only one. I think, like I had said, there's a handful of people in the House even that I've communicated with a little bit that have said, this is not, it's not popular going forward. I'm honestly just hopeful, Guy, to see a state of Vermont where we are able to push through policies that actually work. Not just to benefit some special interest group, one that actually does, ideas. Sure, maybe we're trying things, maybe we're incentivizing different goals, but imagine if things were actually like coherent, right? I mean, I don't know. Last year, I think we spent a lot of time just kind of shaking our heads in the State House and outside of it, as much as time as you could spend there, right? Because it was kind of a toxic environment at times. When you could be there and dealing with certain situations, and I think it's just because of this type of legislation that is just so unpopular, at least by the constituents' beliefs and what the governor's talking about. So people are just kind of like, we're going to go through with this. We're going to push it through. Like Phil Baruth was saying that, handful of the other legislators. It's like, well, these voters and their representatives, like, they kind of know that something ain't right. And I think that's why you see the toxicity that we saw last year in that building. It was not a fun environment at all times, which, it is what it is, but it shouldn't be like that. It was pretty rough. And then that's why you saw the big shift in the election cycle. We do have a comment. I have a comment from Monique Friesen. She writes, I think Senator Ram understands what happens at the last elections.
Correct.
I would agree with that.
Yeah. Thank you, Monique. Good comment. I think she's not the only one. I think there are others who they realize that if they want to stay in office, they're going to have to change how they do things. And that isn't necessarily a self-serving thing just to want to stay in office, because you run for office because you think you can do something worthwhile. And you think that maybe you can do it better than the other guy. So I think we are going to see at least some kind of fine-tuning here. And what we are going to be all over, Paul, in the next 2 years is how much of this is for real change, real listening, real negotiating, and how much of it is just sort of greenwashing.
Well, I think that's going to depend on how much money is on the table, to be quite honest. I think, like in my mind, I would love to envision a state house where we're focusing on issues that aren't just abstract and adhering to some international vision,
right?
And rather policies and ideas that were focused on Vermonters. It doesn't have to be a crappy place to go to every day. We don't have to be fighting. People don't have to be fighting every day unless it's for a good cause, right? And I'm sure many people, they believe that what they're fighting for is for a good cause. I'm not, that's people. I'm sure many of them genuinely believe this, but I do think there's a lot of people behind closed doors that are pushing for certain initiatives, and maybe there's going to be less of that this year because the voters aren't buying it anymore. So if there is less money potential out there, which these pieces of legislation fund or defund entire industries. So Vermont is making a very big decision about where it's going as a future. Like, what is the state actually doing here? Are we going a different direction?
Is that what state government should be doing, though, is funding entire industries?
No, and I think that's what I'm kind of getting at is like,
Yeah.
with the loss of Senator Patrick Leahy no longer
Right.
in the federal government,
Right.
Bernie Sanders is 83. Is he 83?
Something.
He's somewhere. He's up
80
there.
something.
He's old, and he's still doing it, but he's
He
old.
is.
There's not a whole heck of a lot of seniority in the federal government for us anymore, for the state of Vermont.
Yeah.
And if you look, I believe it's something like in the last 4 years, the money that we get, it's 3 to 1. So every dollar that we send in tax dollars to the federal government, we get $3 back. How about an investment guy? It's pretty intense
Wow.
when you think about that. So you're talking about, like infrastructure projects, all of the money that's going into these research and
But
development.
that money's not going to keep coming in, you're saying?
No, it's not going to keep coming in. And I think that we're going to have to really reckon with that. The state, over the next 30 years, could look a heck of a lot different. And that money that we used to be able to kind of depend upon because of leadership, we're no longer going to be able to.
Yeah.
And I have to wonder.
Where does personal, if government's not going to keep pulling our wagon, what can we do, individuals, what can we do ourselves to enhance our quality of life? I'm veering off here, and I know we're sort of starting to wrap up the show, but
Well,
what do you think?
It's interesting you say that because I actually wrote a kind of a maybe fundraising letter, if you will, and put it on X last night. And I kind of, I know, I got to show it to you. I'm not sure if you would want it on the Chronicle, but I put it
Okay.
on my X because it's good. It's good. There's maybe a little tweak we could make to it, but point is like, I think a lot of people, and myself included, especially in 2024, we love to talk about the national elections. We love to talk about the Senate and the House and Donald Trump. It's all very entertaining and fun, and I buy into the hype as much as anybody else because it's what we do. It's kind of the business that we're in, and that's okay. But I think going forward, we need to do, and I'm not talking about maybe us necessarily, but just to our readers, our viewers, and people out there, if you're tired of the way things are going in the state of Vermont, I can tell you from experience that you actually can have an impact. And the only way you can do that, though, is by becoming informed on what's actually going on. Because the only way to make meaningful change is to have accurate thought, and accurate thought requires accurate information. And I believe that we're doing the best that we can to provide that for our readers. So to answer your question, I would say become informed on what's going on and develop a group of other people that are also doing the same thing and make your action, make your move. What do you want to see changed in your town, on your city council? Contact your legislator, and if you're unhappy or you have an idea even. I mean, if you're somebody out there listening who's a Democrat from Woodbury and you have some idea of the clean heat standard in your mind that we could fix, you should reach out to them.
Yep.
But I think what it requires, how we can combat that, how we can be prepared, is people need to be ready. People need to become self-reliant, independent, and they need to become informed. So
Right.
that would be my answer to that question. Was that a good answer? I kind of off the cuff.
I think it's good. I know I just popped it on you. It's because it's something I've been thinking about. Bobby Kennedy and his Make America Healthy Again movement is something I've been thinking a lot about. That here in Vermont, our healthcare rates will be going up 20%. We're getting no love at all from anyone to reduce our healthcare costs. So I think about that, and I think how up in Canada, euthanasia is becoming a very common thing.
Yeah.
And it hasn't quite become that common in Vermont down here. But if we're looking at huge healthcare costs and a healthcare system that is increasingly willing to solve your problem and everyone else's problem with your existence by ending it,
Yeah.
then it behooves us to be healthy, to eat well,
Yes.
to exercise, to not smoke and drink ourselves to death. And that's something that anyone from age, 10 to 90 can do. And it's something, that's under our control, what we do. I don't know if Monique Frieson is still listening, but she could translate this expression, il faut cultiver nos jardins, which is, Voltaire said, we must cultivate our own gardens. And boy, we sort of want to cultivate our neighbor's garden quite a bit, but we've got our own. And our garden really even literally starts with our body, our finances, our decisions. So I guess maybe I'm sort of in New Year's resolution mode, Paul. I don't know.
I like that.
I've been thinking a lot about that. This is something we need to be doing. I need to be doing.
No, I think you're 100%, you're spot on, and I could be better too. I'm pretty healthy, but there are some changes I could make that I think would benefit me in many ways. And I think RFK and his addition to the Trump team is so beneficial for so many reasons, and I think he's bridged a gap in many ways with the more liberal end of the political spectrum. I would say so. And even seeing like some of Bernie's talking points, make America healthy again. Bernie's been talking about that, and he has his kind of take on what that means. And I think that there is I think people are realizing more and more that so many of our problems in this country are caused by health issues. And I mean, that goes without saying, obviously, but where those health issues are often rooted in our daily choices. What are we eating every day? What are we drinking? What are we putting into our bodies? And when we're not eating well, it clogs up your body, and it impairs your ability to think. And if you're not thinking clearly and accurately, then you can never do anything meaningful because you're too tied up processing junk. Your
Right.
brain literally can't keep up with it. But I think just to kind of piggyback on a little bit of what we've been talking about too, is I posted this on December 22nd on X. I wrote, I'm finding increasingly there are quite a few accounts on X based in Vermont that are Annan/conservative, Annan meaning anonymous. And that got 4.9 thousand views and 75 likes, which for people that are paying attention to using X, like that's pretty good. And I'm literally just talking about Vermont. I'm not talking about anything national. That's pretty telling that there's actually, there's a whole group of people out there, relatively marginalized, maybe. I don't know, maybe that's a little bit of a dramatic term, but there's a whole group of people out there in Vermont that think just the way that you do, and they're engaging online. They're engaging on X. They're communicating, and I have some ideas going into the coming months here, into the spring, of maybe some type of group that we can form, a group of tradesmen. And I'm curious to hear on anybody's feedback, an online group of tradesmen and internet gurus and lawyers and doctors and people that think like we do. So that way we can actually build an apparatus that is somewhat resistant to some of the stuff we're talking about. What do you think of that, Guy?
Well, one of the things I think is that Vermont, this is probably not at all what you were talking about, Paul, but one thing Vermont does not have is a taxpayer advocacy group. There's no one. There's a million organizations that are looking to raise taxes, but ever since the Ethan Allen Institute sort of kind of slowed down, there's not a single group out there that is saying, no, we don't need more new taxes. And the reason this matters this year, Paul, is that everyone agrees, the property tax, yeah, we can't raise the property tax hardly at all. Okay, then does that mean they're not going to raise other taxes too? They're going to create new taxes? Is this payroll tax that produces huge amounts of money for childcare? Are they going to say, boy, new payroll tax? Maybe we add 1% to that, and that pays whatever the cause du jour is for the legislature. So there's no really sort of organized, no, that's really not a good idea.
Vermonters for freedom, unity, and low taxes.
You heard it here
You heard it here first, and
folks.
if you steal that idea, I shouldn't even have brought it up because I've been keeping this a secret for a while.
Wow.
But
Wow. Okay. You know, that's probably not a bad place to stop, Paul.
that is a good place to stop.
Yeah. Thank you, folks. Thanks for listening to us. Please share this, and we will see you again next Friday.